MotoGP silly season has kicked fully into gear. We've got some spectacular rumours about next season, starting from people walking away from rides to some crazy World Superbike switches. So I'm joined by Lewis Duncan to talk me through some of these incredible rumours that we've got circulating. Let's start with the walking away rumour and Jorge Lorenzo from Honda. So we know he's had a difficult start to the season, and that we've already talked on previous videos about what he's got to do to persuade Honda to keep him on. But if they do decide to get rid of him, what options do they have for next season?
Well, Honda's options are limited in that case because all the factory riders are contracted to the end of next year. We have this 2-year cycle that begins, and if you get out of sync of that, you can get into trouble. And if Lorenzo does decide to walk away, Honda are in a bit of a bind because there aren't that many options there they could take. I mean, Lorenzo was the best of a bad situation to begin with. Their preferred options, one of them, this man there, Joan Mir, signed by Suzuki. Dovizioso stayed at Ducati, and of course Zarco went to KTM. So all those guys are signed up. They can't go to them unless they're willing to pay big bucks to get them out of their contracts, and again, that would be difficult from a legal point. So the options there are limited. Of course, the name that might spring to mind for Autosport viewers will be Cal Crutchlow, Britain's Cal Crutchlow, the LCR rider, now contracted to HRC directly rather than LCR. So there is that option, I suppose, that they could maybe make a slightly easier move than if he was to come straight from LCR. But again, there's a lot of PR things in the way. I mean, they've got different sponsors, Monster sponsors Cal, Red Bull sponsors the Repsol team. So that would be a difficult thing to get out of. And, is Crutchlow ready to take on that full factory position? Yeah, I think so. He is a very quick rider. We've seen that, multiple race winner. But again, what happens then to LCR? They've got to find a rider. So Honda would be in a very difficult situation. So the likely options would be take Cal and then maybe put Taka Nakagami on one of the full factory bike and then try and find someone else to go for last year's spec, or try and buy someone out of a contract. But they would have to come with a pretty big checkbook to try and get that one sorted, I reckon. It looks like that's one of the more sort of one of the rumours that isn't really going to happen. I mean, we're talking about Jorge Lorenzo being dropped or retiring, and neither of those options look very likely. Yeah, and it's a very unfair thing to sort of suggest to Lorenzo as well, because he's not been fully fit for the last 10 months. It's been an adaptation process from the Ducati to the Honda, which hasn't been easy because this bike is difficult. Crutchlow's complained a lot about the 2019 Honda. Marquez has had his complaints as well, so not really fair to just suggest that Lorenzo's going to walk away because things are getting tough. This is Jorge Lorenzo. This is a multiple world champion in all disciplines of Grand Prix racing. He's not going to shy away from a fight just because things are a bit difficult just now. When it comes to the MotoGP silly season, the runners and riders in the Moto2 Championship always come up. One of the key ones, obviously the one leading the championship at the minute, is Alex Marquez. Looking like a Pramac or an Avintia deal maybe not coming off. So where do we expect him to be? And is he a real player for a MotoGP seat next year, or is it going to be a little bit more difficult for him? Well, a lot of this year's sort of rider market has revolved around Alex Marquez, Marc Marquez's younger brother. Initially, there was a rumour that perhaps he would go to Pramac, which a few months ago was one of Ducati's problems in trying to find places for Petrucci and Miller, and of course Marquez as well. Miller's going to stay at Pramac. That's pretty much a guarantee now that Petrucci is signed on to the factory team. So Marquez's best option now of a MotoGP ride is perhaps a Avintia on one of the year-old Ducatis. Still quite closely linked to Bologna, where Ducati is based. So that wouldn't be such a bad option to come into MotoGP and just kind of get adapted under the radar a little bit. But there is a sort of school of thought that perhaps Alex Marquez going to Avintia or any Ducati customer, as it was a few months ago, is maybe their management just feeling out Ducati for a potential Marc Marquez move in 2021. Of course, like all the rumours in this video, and in any silly season there is, you have to take them all with a pinch of salt. That one does seem quite far-fetched, but there is some sort of method to that madness if you think about it. So Avintia ride does maybe look like it's going to go the way of Lorenzo Baldassarri, who formerly led the Moto2 standings this year, but's had a bit of a nightmare run of DNF, so he's dropped quite far off. So the moves around silly season are directly affecting World Superbikes and how the MotoGP riders could switch between the two. So Lewis has obviously got some insight in covering World Superbikes as well as MotoGP, so he's well versed to talk to you about this one. But Marquez slots into this World Superbike kind of rumour mill, doesn't he? Kawasaki, the world champions in World Superbike, are perhaps fishing around for Alex Marquez. Tito Rabat, current Avintia rider, has been linked there as well, and so is Alex Marquez's Moto2 teammate Xavi Vierge. That factory Kawasaki team is run by Provec, which is a Spanish squad, so there is a thought there that maybe they want a Spanish rider in their team, and maybe Dorna want another Spanish rider on the grid as well. Of course, we've got a couple of Spaniards on the grid there, and former Grand Prix riders Jordi Torres, and of course Alvaro Bautista on the factory Ducati now. Did dominate the start of the season, but it's had a really tough run of late. So Dorna is quite keen to maybe try and get a bit more European talent on that grid. It's very heavily tilted towards British riders, but those rumours seem, of the riders linked to that seat, Rabat I could kind of maybe see as being the more likely, because he's had a difficult time on the Ducati, struggled a lot coming back from that horror leg injury he suffered at Silverstone last year. That's really hindered his progress on this bike, so he hasn't quite had the results we were all expecting really on what is a really good package, the GP18. So maybe a move to World Superbikes would be a great thing just for his confidence more than anything. But Kawasaki have got a bit of an embarrassment of riches there, because they've got, from the World Superbike side, they've got current rider Leon Haslam, who former Grand Prix racer as well, many years ago. He might be kept on there. He's only on a 1-year deal just now, and there's their up-and-coming superstar Toprak Razgatlioglu, who has been podium for the last 4 or 5 rounds now in World Superbike. So a lot of talent there. Marquez, going back to him, likely he's going to stay in Moto2 with Marc VDS, which he's not too fussed about. He'd rather wait until a good seat becomes available, and of course next year is when the contract negotiations open up for 2021. So Marquez is maybe better served staying in Moto2 than going to World Superbikes, and maybe just falling off the radar a little bit.
A bit of controversy in a silly season is always nice, and providing that controversy this year has been the Johan Zarco to World Superbike rumour mill, in which a tweet was made, deleted. There's all sorts of secret stuff going on in the background here. Lewis, you've been in the middle of this and covering it for all the publications, so tell us about how this Zarco rumour came about and a little bit more detail about how it sort of looks moving forward. Is to any of it real?
It's a very strange rumour. It emerged, a publication posted a story, a typical silly season rumour story that was picked up by the official World Superbike Twitter feed, which is of course run by Dorna. So then it was deleted quite quickly for, I think, fear of being seen as being a bit too sensationalist. Zarco had no idea about it, and he was getting all these phone calls from people saying, what's this rumour about? And he addressed it a couple of races ago and said, look, this is nonsense. I don't know who did it, but they should get sacked for posting that tweet, because it's going to cause me all sorts of trouble with KTM and all that sort of thing, that's a fair enough point. We don't think about that when it comes to rumours, is that it can cause a bit of trouble with a rider, but this one is a very bizarre one, because of all the teams to even consider going to in World Superbikes, away from a factory KTM deal, a very lucrative one at that as well. It might not be successful so far, but he's still being paid a fair amount of money. Honda isn't the team you would pick. HRC have just come back to World Superbikes. They are putting a bit more effort into it, but it's not really going to be until next year that we see any dividends of that. And even then, we're not really sure if Honda are going to come with a new Superbike next year. The Fireblade they have now is just out of date. It's not going to cut it in World Superbikes anymore. So I don't know why Zarco would even consider that. Even if it was his last option, there would be suitors there in MotoGP that would happily take his signature. So that's a very strange one. And of all the rumours that have come out of this silly season, that's the one I believe the least, just because it's so absurd.
Zarco obviously chased by other teams before this season and then made that KTM switch, and it hasn't gone to plan. So although the World Superbike rumour may not come off, what do we think about Zarco's future with KTM? Are they starting to lose patience with him a little bit? Do they feel like they've signed something and they've not received what they were expecting?
Yeah, it's definitely that. I mean, Zarco had a big outburst about the bike at Jerez, which was picked up by French television and of course relayed out to the world on websites. KTM scorned him for it, and since then Zarco has been working in a better way. Of course, Danny Pedrosa's now picked up his role as test rider, and his comments have actually vindicated some of Zarco's. So I think maybe things are starting to get a bit more harmonious, and Zarco's got it into his head now he's not going to win on this bike this year. So he is going to start approaching the season differently. KTM will want to see a big turnaround second half of the season. Again, I don't think they're going to drop him at the end of this one, but if he has another downturn in form in the second half of the season, they might be forced to, because there's a lot of money coming into this KTM project, and Zarco was signed as that final piece of the puzzle to begin to bring KTM forward as a consistent top 6 manufacturer in this MotoGP World Championship?